Paramedics slash EMTs of Reddit, what is the most gruesome slash disturbing call you have ever responded to? What's your story? Hi, 1 second before watching this video, if you didn't like something, write in the comments please. The longest ride to the hospital. I'm a paramedic. This one happened pretty late, around 11:30 at night. We were dispatched to a woman reporting cramps and heavy bleeding. She was pregnant. We pull up and find her in her driveway, barefoot, shaking, pale, and out of it. She couldn't answer any of my questions, just stood there swaying. No one else around. From the look of her, she'd lost a lot of blood. Once we got her into the back of the ambulance, I used the Doppler to try and pick up fetal heart tones, nothing. I told my partner I was gonna check inside the house, see if maybe there was someone else home or more clues to what had happened. I grabbed a flashlight and followed the trail of blood into the open garage. The trail led into the kitchen, through the living room, and finally to the bathroom. That was the only room with a light on. I called out, "Paramedics. Anybody here?" but got no response. I pushed the bathroom door open. Blood was pooled near the toilet, and right next to it was the fetus. Looked like around 28 to 32 weeks. It was hard to see. The smell hit me first. Then the weight of what I was looking at. It was one of the worst things I've come across. Still, I remembered something I'd learned in training. After a miscarriage or stillbirth, the mother sometimes needs time to hold her baby. Even when it's already gone. It helps some of them cope. So I carefully picked up the body, placed it in a bag, and went back to the ambulance. By the time I got in, my partner had already started fluids. I quietly told him what I'd found, and we agreed not to waste time, just head straight for the hospital. The whole ride, the woman didn't say a word. But then, about halfway there, she looked at me, calm, barely a whisper, and asked, "Can I have my baby?" I nodded and said, "Of course." Handed her the bag. She took it gently, teared up, and held it close the rest of the way. I didn't say anything. Just sat next to her, monitoring her vitals and holding her hand. Lonely man in the gray sweatpants. I work as an escort, and one night I got called out to this guy, had to be around 60. Full-blown alcoholic. His place was a complete disaster, smelled like mold and stale booze. He stood up when I walked in, and that's when I noticed the back of his gray sweatpants. It looked like layers, literal rings, of dried shit. Not just one accident. Like he'd crapped himself, let it dry, then done it again. At least 4 times. I told him flat out I couldn't touch him unless he showered, but he refused. I should have left, honestly. But he looked so heartbroken, almost desperate for company. He asked me to just stay, and I did. We sat there for an hour, didn't touch. I didn't even sit on his furniture. But he was just so lonely. The look in his eyes when I said I'd stay, it broke something in me. And the worst part? I knew him. Well, sort of. He used to be with my best friend's mom. They were together about 6 years, not married, but my friend lived with him for a while. I even hung out at that house when I was younger. He didn't recognize me, but he kept calling me by her mom's name. That really messed with my head. That night stuck with me, not because it was disgusting, although it absolutely was, but because it reminded me how damn sad some lives can get. People think this job is all sex and weird requests. And yeah, it can be. But what I see more often is pain. Deep, aching, human sadness. Mental illness, addiction, the kind of loneliness that clings to a person like smoke. You wouldn't believe how many older clients just sit there and tell me war stories, talk about their ex-wives, or pour out trauma they've never shared with anyone else. Sex? It's like the smallest part of the whole thing. And honestly? Guys who poop their pants? Not that rare. I have 2 regulars who do it. It's awful, yeah, but it happens. I help clean them up, try not to make them feel ashamed, and gently push them to see a doctor. We have free healthcare here, but I get it, it's embarrassing. Still, I try to be kind. You can only see so much heartbreak before it starts changing the way you look at people. The raid incident. I've been a paramedic for years, seen a lot of things I wish I could forget, but this call, from about 2 years ago, still stands out as one of the nastiest. I was running 911 in a Midwest city, and we got a dispatch for an OB/GYN emergency. Pretty standard at first. We're heading out when the radio crackles. Medic 25, come in. 25, go ahead. Update from police on scene. Go ahead, dispatch. You're responding to a burned vagina. I actually paused and asked them to repeat that, thinking I'd misheard. But nope. They confirmed it. Burned vagina. So, yeah, we continued to the call. It was at a trailer park I'd been to more times than I could count that week, rough area, low income, lots of drugs. But oddly, when we arrived, the trailer itself was clean and pretty tidy, aside from that lingering cigarette smoke. Inside, there's a teenage girl, maybe 17, sitting on a chair. She's got no pants on, just a damp washcloth covering herself, and her parents are standing nearby. I walk in and introduce myself, doing my best to keep a straight face. Hey, I'm with the fire department. Can you tell me what's going on? She just says, you should probably take a look. So I carefully move the washcloth. And I swear, I nearly gagged. Her entire groin area was swollen, patchy, and discolored. There was a sharp chemical smell, little streaks of blood, and signs of infection, pus and all. It looked like her skin had been through hell. I asked, what happened to you? She looked at me and said, my boyfriend gave me crabs. I blinked and said, okay, but crabs don't cause this. And then she drops the bomb, I know. But I didn't want my parents to find out, so I didn't go to a doctor. I used Raid. I froze. You mean, like, the bug spray? She nodded, but added, no, not the regular kind. I think it was the wasp killer. At that point, I was honestly speechless. I mean, I've heard some wild stuff over the years, but spraying wasp poison down there? That was a new one. I just told her we needed to get her to the hospital right away. The damage was real, and whatever infection was brewing could get serious fast. Honestly, that call haunts me, not just because of the physical damage, but because of the desperation behind it. The fear of telling her parents, the lack of proper health education, the idea that Raid was a better option than seeing a doctor. Some calls stick with you for their tragedy more than their shock factor. This one had both. The couch case. One of the calls that'll stay with me for life came from a house where several adults with mental disabilities lived together. The patient was a middle-aged woman, mentally challenged, who had apparently injured her knee a few months earlier. The pain, for her, was so bad that she just never got up again. I'm not exaggerating. She stayed on that same couch for nearly 4 months straight. No getting up to use the bathroom. No showering. Nothing. She peed there. She pooped there. She even had her period there. For 4 months. Her roommates, also mentally challenged, kept bringing her food, water, whatever she needed. They meant well, but none of them really understood that this situation had gone way beyond normal. Eventually, the smell in the house got so bad that they finally called us. I've smelled some bad things on the job, but that place hit me like a truck when we walked in. When we peeled her off the couch, and I mean that literally, the scene was so horrific that some of the more seasoned guys on the crew ran outside and vomited. It wasn't just the smell. It was what we saw. From halfway down her but to the back of her knee, her skin and tissue had basically rotted away. She had necrotizing fasciitis, flesh-eating bacteria. You could actually see her femur on one leg. All the muscle, tissue, and skin in that area was just gone or blackened like charred meat. The odor when we helped her stand, just death, piss, and feces, was like getting slapped in the face. I can't believe we didn't all hit the floor from how intense it was. Last I heard, they had to amputate at least one of her legs. Maybe both. I don't even know how she survived that long, honestly. Sometimes people think being a medic is all flashing lights and hero moments, but it's really this kind of stuff that sticks with you, when someone suffers so badly, for so long, and nobody really understands how bad it's gotten until it's almost too late. The lucky rider. Back when I was still a basic EMT student, we got toned out for a motor vehicle crash. We roll up and see a motorcycle jammed so deep into the front end of a parked car that it looked like it fused with the engine block. Lying there was the rider, unconscious, barely breathing. No helmet. Still alive somehow, which was honestly shocking. He was agonal breathing, his eyes were unresponsive and visibly deviated. My brain immediately screamed head and neck trauma. He had half his scalp hanging off, a solid depressed skull fracture, and from what we could tell, the pressure building up in his skull had forced him to clamp down so hard that he basically bit through his own tongue. His airway was a bloody disaster. We had to wrestle his mouth open just to suction enough blood to throw in an OPA. Most of the ride was just me bagging him nonstop and pushing fluids. His lungs were already in bad shape, could hear it, feel it. It was grim. When we rolled into the ER, they had chest tubes going in both sides of his chest within minutes. One side was draining blood like a faucet. Honestly, we figured he might not make it through the night. But get this, the guy walked out of the hospital. No joke. It was one of those miracle saves that reminds you how unpredictable trauma can be. And listen, if you're on a bike, for the love of everything, wear a damn helmet. That thing isn't a fashion choice, it's the only thing between your brain and the pavement. And quit it with the stunts, those wheelies and show-off moves. Nobody's impressed, and it's not worth dying over. I've seen too many lives wrecked from people thinking they're invincible. She was gone before help could come. This one's second-hand, didn't run the call myself, but my FTO did, and it stuck with him. A husband and wife were home, making dinner like any normal night. At some point, she accidentally spilled a pot of boiling water straight onto her lap. Severe scalding, painful as hell. The husband panicked, grabbed her, and tossed her into his truck without even thinking twice. He figured getting her to the hospital fast was all that mattered. It was late, the roads were clear, and he gunned it, hit around 80 in a 50 zone. But he didn't account for the hill coming up. As they crested it, his truck caught a little air. That tiny moment was enough to throw things off. He lost control, couldn't brake, swerved, slammed straight into the back of a dump truck that was turning. She died on impact. The corner of the dump truck's rear bumper hit her head with such force it crushed her skull. Instant. Done. What really stuck with me was the aftermath. The totaled truck got towed to our impound yard, and it sat there for a while as the investigation was ongoing. I had to walk by that wreck almost every day. It was just a brutal reminder of how fast things can go sideways. The husband got slapped with a manslaughter charge. I never found out what happened to him legally, but emotionally? The guy was shattered. Imagine thinking you're helping, trying to save the person you love, and ending up being the one who kills them instead. Please, if you take anything from this story, don't try to be the ambulance. Unless it's truly life or death in the next 60 seconds, call 911. Let trained professionals handle it. We know how to drive fast safely, and more importantly, we can start treatment on scene. We pulled a toddler from the ashes. I've been on the job a while, but there's one call that still haunts me more than most. Early morning, our station gets dispatched to what was reported as a mobile home fire. We were told there might be people trapped inside, but nothing confirmed. When we pulled up, it became clear real fast, it wasn't a mobile home, it was a camper trailer. And yeah, there were people inside. Turns out the family had been living in that camper temporarily while their house was getting renovated. The dad made it out through a window. But the mom and their 3-year-old didn't. If you've never dealt with a camper fire, let me tell you, those things go up like paper. They're fast, and by the time you arrive, it's usually too late. With regular house fires, especially in rural areas, if it's been burning a while, you're usually digging through rubble just hoping to find remains. This wasn't like that. We were still putting the flames out when we had to do the unthinkable, pull a toddler's remains from the coils of what used to be a mattress. That image, it burned itself into all of us who were there. It's one thing to lose someone in a fire. It's another to see that loss up close. We're trained for the worst, but that kind of call? You don't shake that off. Months later, my crew and I are still processing it. Some calls fade with time. Others stay lodged in your head like splinters. This one's the latter. My first fatal. I was working out at a mine when my pager went off. I glanced at the screen and froze. Major incident, child trapped, 130 kilometers west, highway name. The guy I was working with didn't say a word as I bolted straight for my gear and jumped into the truck. Calls like that hit different. You get next to no information, and when you see the word child, it stops your heart. And that whole 130 kilometers, I just sat behind the wheel with my foot pressed hard, silently begging the truck to go faster. Out in those remote areas, it's not unusual for a kid to be trapped for hours before we even get called. Between the distance and how slow police are to activate us, we've had scenes where entrapments lasted 5-6 hours before we even arrived. When we pulled up, chaos. Total chaos. The mother was in complete shock, didn't speak, didn't move. Paramedics ended up sedating her. The siblings were in hysterics. Even some of the EMTs were crying. We made our way to the wreck. Found the child pinned beneath the rear left wheel. His skull had been split open, and brain matter had been thrown nearly 45 meters from the car. Strangely enough, it was at that moment I felt myself calm down. He had died instantly. He wasn't suffering. Somehow, that helped. The investigation team didn't get to us for nearly 18 hours. By that point, the kid's body had started to turn. The smell of human insides mixed with spilled groceries that had exploded across the road, all baking under the Australian sun. If you've smelled it, you know, you don't forget it. From what they figured out later, the child had been in a booster seat in the back, acting up, slipping his arms out of the straps. His mom, trying to discipline him, turned around to deal with it and lost control of the car. It rolled. The kid was ejected, and when the car came to rest, it landed directly on him. The father lived about 150 kilometers away, out on a remote property. He burned through a full tank of gas in his XR6 getting to the site. I don't even want to imagine what speed he was pushing. What really hit me, though, came the next morning. We were clearing the scene, picking up debris. I saw a pile of tiny toddler clothes scattered across the road. I bent down, scooped them up, and chucked them off to the side. I remember thinking, they're not gonna need these anymore. I've responded to plenty of awful wrecks since then. But that was my first fatal. That's the one that stuck. I learned a lot that day, about how weirdly durable the human body can be, and at the same time, how heartbreakingly fragile it is. And the smell? It's still with me. Always will be. Tootsie Pop and burnt flesh. Got called out around 2 a.m. for a vehicle fire on a winding back road in a small Louisiana town, about 45 minutes out from the nearest decent hospital. When we pulled up, it was clear whoever was driving must have been flying. They'd blasted clean through a power pole and somehow still ended up a good 50 yards into the field. 3 patients total. Another EMS crew was already on scene. One of their medics came over as soon as we rolled up and told us 2 of them were already gone. She asked us to help stabilize the third while they waited on airlift. As we were working on her, she kept repeating one thing over and over, "Where's my daughter?" At the same time, a cop walks up to me and says, "Hey, that guy over there's still breathing." I hadn't even seen him yet. I rushed over, and yeah, he was alive, barely. Burns covered about 90% of his body, deep third-degree stuff. He started crashing while I was assessing him, so I jumped on CPR. Every compression, skin just sloughed off under my palms. But somehow, I got a rhythm back. We went to move him, and when I grabbed his legs to help lift him onto the spine board, I'll never forget it, his legs felt like bags of crushed rock. Just brittle, crumbling. Firefighters helped get him on the board and started hauling him to the stretcher, and that's when I saw the third victim, still in the car. No one had pulled her out yet because she was obviously gone from the start. Small body. No doubt in my mind, that was the daughter the woman kept asking about. We loaded up, ready to take the burn victim in, but the lead paramedic told me we weren't transporting. Doctor said no. With burns that severe, there was really no hope, but it still felt wrong to just stop. Scene time ended up being close to 2 hours, which is way out of bounds. Usually you're supposed to be in and out within 10 to 15 minutes tops. It was a full-blown mess. Supervisor had to come out just to check on us all. Honestly though, I was holding it together. You know why? A cop gave me a Tootsie Pop. Dumb, I know. But that tiny bit of normal in a night like that, it made a difference. Still, I don't think I'll ever shake that smell. Burnt flesh clings to you, in your clothes, your gear, your head. The call that stuck. I've been a paramedic for over 16 years. I've seen it all, house fires that shattered families, wrecks so bad no one walked away. But there's one call, from about 15 years back, that still haunts me. Even now, just typing this out brings tears to my eyes. We were dispatched to a firearm incident. The only info we had was that someone had been shot. When we arrived, it became painfully clear, the caller had taken his own life. He left the message vague so we'd be the ones to find him, not his family. It was heartbreaking, but not the worst part. You get used to some of that over the years, sad as that sounds. The real gut punch came a few minutes later. He had left voicemails for his parents, knowing they wouldn't check them until the end of their workday. But his mom? She got hers early. She came home while we were still on scene. Her screams, man. I've never heard that kind of pain before or since. It wasn't just crying, it was raw, agonizing grief pouring out of her. It still echoes in my head sometimes. 15 years have gone by, but I can still picture everything. I remember exactly what the house looked like. What room he was in. What he was wearing. I remember his name. His mom's name. The address. It's all burned into me. That moment changed something in me. I'm putting my phone down now. Gonna go hug my kids a little tighter tonight. The overstuffed sausage leg. I'm a paramedic, and there's one call that stuck with me, not for how gruesome it was, but just how strange the whole situation turned out to be. It was right in the middle of a brutal snowstorm. I mean, the kind where if you called 911, you had to actually talk to a doctor first, and only if he approved would our rig even head out. Plus, we had to be escorted by a snowplow just to get to the call safely. We got a dispatch about a woman who'd fallen out of bed at a senior home, and there was some kind of leg wound. Honestly, our mood wasn't great when we got there. It felt like another nurse trying to avoid dealing with an elderly patient. We finally made it, but before even entering, we had to shovel a path to the front door. It was like walking into a scene from The Shining. The old place was creepy and quiet. A nurse met us with that look every medic knows means something seriously wrong. Then we went to the woman's room. She must have been 95 or so, lying on the floor. Her leg was something I'll never forget. It looked like a hot dog left on the grill way too long and split open. Because of the swelling in her legs and her paper-thin skin, whatever she'd hit had ruptured the skin like an overstuffed sausage popping. You could see all the layers, muscle, fat, skin, and even a little glimpse of bone. We tried to dress it carefully and keep it as clean as we could, but the weirdest part was the lady herself. She was chatting away like nothing was wrong, never mentioning any pain. She just asked if someone could scratch or rub her leg because it was itching. We managed to get her to the hospital. Last I heard, they were trying to staple the wound shut, but her skin was so fragile it kept tearing. Crazy call. Definitely one for the books. The warm tears that haunt me. After years of working both military and civilian EMS, I've grown numb to most calls. But the ones involving kids still hit me hard. The worst call I ever responded to was a child beaten to death by a drug-addicted, abusive parent. When we got there, I pulled the kid out of the bed to start treatment. I moved a pillow aside, and something caught my eye, a wet spot right where the child had buried their face during the abuse. The tears were still warm. The child was already gone. There was nothing we could do. Just moments before, that kid was crying, and not enough time had passed for those tears to dry or cool. But I couldn't save them. Those warm tears, they still haunt me every time I think about it. The crash that broke me. My husband was driving, and his wife was sitting shotgun, her feet up on the dash in a squatting position. Then bam, we got rear-ended hard and shoved into a boat trailer. Her left femur shattered to dust the moment it slammed into her left shoulder. Both her tibia and fibula broke clean through, and her scapula was crushed. Her leg ended up looping over her shoulder, with her foot and ankle tucked weirdly between her back and the seat rest. At first, I thought it was just a scarf, I was so wrong. Her right knee got slammed backward into her jaw, knocking out every tooth, shattering the jaw, and splitting it in 2 directions. It looked like something out of a horror movie. Her tongue and the major muscles in her mouth and neck were half swallowed, then twisted back up the wrong way. My partners were in the back seat, holding her head still while I threw a collar on her, preparing to perform a tracheotomy to help her breathe. I'll never forget her eyes, that flicker, like she was trying to reboot and make sense of what just happened. We tried to punch a hole to get air through, but we hit her hyoid bone, which shattered into pieces. We all just sat there, trying to keep her comfortable as she had her last gasps and slipped away. When we pulled her onto the stretcher, she didn't even look human anymore. We did CPR, hit her with the AED, every touch made that horrible bubble wrap crackling noise from shattered ribs and torn tissue. Her legs were twisted up like some macabre sculpture. We never got her to breathe again. She was DOA. That call broke me. She looked like my mom. Or at least what I imagined my mom would look like if she'd been through hell like that.